push the. Hey, Thomas. This is myself, Mike, and my friend Thomas here, and we are the first to last of the Nerdom. I don't want to belabor this too much or beat around the bush. This week we have an epic showdown between fantasy nerd camps that has been warring for. It just recently heated up very much, and it. We're about ready to go through the. We have a little a part-time guest. What do they call that? Motto or not motto, but help me
mascot.
Mascot. Thank you. Good
yeah.
grief. Good God, my dad brain kicked in full gear. It's Labor Day thinking, Labor Day breathing for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, Scorn of Gorn. He's made the appearance as we've made our travels through the wonderful world of nerddom. And this is going to be a big one. We're just kind of going down because we have these two tremendously big ones, and they just kept getting bigger and bigger. At least that is true for Hot D, and that is also true for Rings of Power, which just broke upon the scene. And we are going to kind of go through a little bit of that, whether big thoughts for our big show here. We might touch a little bit on another movie that we both watched as well. It's kind of got it's somewhat wholesome, and with a twist, I would say. It's not super great or anything like that, but it didn't disappoint. I mean, it was all right. You kind of knew what you were getting. But anyway, that's the Stallone property. But with all that, before we get into the Scorn of Gorn, Dragons versus Rings, and all that wonderful stuff, we want to call attention to our main program here, which we're releasing a little bit in reverse order. And that's because we got a little bit of hopped on the Nerdom and YouTube land, and our grab bag episode, which we just published. If I refresh here, we would love it if you could give it a watch. I think it's going to be processed here anyway. But in any case, like, comment, subscribe. Tell us some of the other things in the Nerdom you like. Tell us what you like. We just had a big cringe corner episode with the grab bag, and we would like direct all eyes to that. But that was kind of fun to go through. And then we covered our usual weekly culture and comics and news and whatnot. We're very very loosey goosey with things as we revise the format here, and we learn and we kind of roll with what works and what doesn't. But in any case, if you're a true Blue fan, please hit that subscribe button down below, and you'll hear more of our hot takes or cold takes. I think ours are more like leftover takes. Sometimes they're not too spicy, but they're good enough for a second helping the next day. That's for sure.
Well, I like that you mentioned that, because I've noticed I'm not obsessive, but I keep an eye on our channel, and I see that our views pick up every few days. We get another view on one of our videos, and a lot of our some of our grab bags are time sensitive as far as they're talking about maybe the news of the day, but most of our stuff is kind of timeless, as in we're talking about certain movies and whatnot. And I've noticed that in our viewing on certain videos, we'll see another view or two pop up on them. So people are either going back and watching ones that they didn't get a chance to view, or picking up maybe some new viewers. But yeah, it's nice to see that our older ones get another view or two here and there throughout. And then also our semi regular thing, I've got a Chinese fortune here, which is actually pretty good. It says, "Soon you will be sitting on top of the world." So yeah, so I'll be taking you all with me as soon as the first last Nerdom. We're going to be sitting on top of the world. We'll bring all of our community with us. We'll be sitting on top together.
Yeah, we're handing down our pronouncements from on high. We're definitely flying high this week with the House of the Dragon, as well as a light comparison and some other commentary with the Rings of Power. These two things are now out. The Hot D came out about a week before, week or two before. Well, it feels like 2 weeks, but it's like, whatever. A little bit before the Power of the Rings. And in any case,
Rings to the P.
yeah. I was gonna say, I was gonna before we hit the breakers here and we jump in and we start surfing the big waves. I was thinking that we could maybe do just a little coin toss to get it started on the Samaritan as just a light kind of intro that is this kind of trifecta thing that we're doing this week. And before we get into the main meat of the thing to warm up, I just wanted to cover this real quick. I actually really enjoyed this one. And what were your thoughts on this particular Stallone movie? This one didn't disappoint. I see the rating here is, and we're going to talk about ratings a little bit later on. But for the most part, first blush, none of this stuff is scientific. That's one thing everybody needs to understand. It is definitely popularity contest for sure for all these things, more often than not. And I think people forget that. And sometimes there are things that come from it. But for the most part, I just wanted to kind of just get this one out of the way and kind of give it credit where due. I like this. I've been held up sick this week from COVID. So I thank God it was a good week to be sick, I guess. There was no want for entertainment for sure. Although to be honest with you, most of the week, I didn't want to watch anything. I just wanted to watch the inside of my eyelids. As one does, you're just worn down and whatnot. But anyway, I was happy. Like when I did get in the mood to watch these things and to kind of be entertained a little bit. I really liked this one. It was surprising. I'll say that it was very stereotypical in some aspects of like that template kind of movie that Stallone was known for when we were growing up in the 80s and the 90s. And couldn't get enough of those action, like They Could Do No Wrong. Even breaking the fourth wall in some movies, like The Last Action Hero with Schwarzenegger. But those two were rivals back in the day. But anyway, I digress. What were your thoughts on this one, real quick?
Yeah, it was enjoyable. I was doing something while I was watching it. It's one of those movies where you don't have to, dive deep and be very deep into it to appreciate it. Yeah, it's a fun little action movie. It's kind of falling in line with the superhero genre that we have now, and the fact that Stallone's getting a little bit older, he's can't really pull off the big macho guy, so to speak, traditionally. But if he's like a superhero, older superhero, yeah, he still can be super strong and throw people around. So yeah, it works for his character. And it was a fun little movie. The dynamic between Stallone and the kid was fun to watch. There's sort of a little twist in the movie, and I guessed it
there is
pretty early on. But
did you? Yeah, I had COVID brain, so like I did not see that. But I now when I go back and think about it, like they sure as heck telegraphed a little bit. I mean, it was classic, but I did not grab onto it right away. Yeah. I mean, I didn't really think I had the fog brain from COVID, but for the most part, it was still like, yeah, you're right. Twist. I'm not going to say nothing about that. Right. But it is integral to the movie, and you don't want to run it for folks. But it is a classic, almost kind of father-son type kind of thing. And what I mean by that is these two characters on the screen, Stallone, and then the Javon Walton. He played in Umbrella Academy, I believe. Yep. And also, I can't remember the other thing. But in any case, Umbrella Academy is the most recent thing that I know he did play, for sure.
Yeah, he was good in Umbrella Academy. Yep.
Yeah, and he's good in this as well. He does a good job. But it's just a classic underdog story, literally underdog story. And
Stallone's somewhat back. He's got this movie, and then he has a new Paramount Plus show called Tulsa Kings that's coming out later this year. I think it's in either November or December. And it looks pretty good. It's by one of the executive producers of The Sopranos. Looks sort of like he's sort of a kind of, I don't know if he's a mob boss or something, but yeah, it looks kind of interesting. It's like a little drama.
Is it kind of like when he did Get Carter?
I don't know. It's probably more. Yeah, I think they're probably going for, since Yellowstone was a big hit. They're probably kind of mapping it for that vein sort of thing. I haven't seen Yellowstone, but yeah, I think it's yeah, and I haven't actually seen Get Carter, so I'm not sure. But yeah, it'd be something to check out. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say this falls in line with about the quality of that line of movies. Like in Get Carter, he was like a mafia kind of guy, I believe. Anyway, there's like it was very it was all right.
Yeah. Well, he is Italian, so I guess that falls in line with the stereotype.
Well, the fact that I remember it was memorable enough. I mean, is it going to be anything great? No. Was it a good solid 6 out of 10 like this seems to be? Yeah, absolutely. Solid. Base hit, whatever. Nothing fancy, but yeah, we have Post Malone Light here as the as the not the super villain, but as the main foe, gang leader, whatever guy here, and then that's not really giving anything away. But he's got the typical bad dude vibes going on, whatever, with his gang and the homeless tattoo face, whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to make a joke, but I can't. But in any case,
that was the big dance scene right there.
Oh, you're funny, Thomas. Yeah, that's what it looks like, right? So yeah, so they have a dance off, and they say they see who can the superpower is to shake your pom poms as good as you. No, I'm kidding. No, that has nothing to do with that. But anyway, just kind of want to like that's kind of like a cool little thing. There plays a little bit into it, but not much to say other than this. I think don't they call him like a grandpa or something? Or they mock him or something like that. Or I want, maybe that's a different thing I'm thinking, but anyway.
And they leave it up for the possibility of some sequels. So I'm sure, sure. Since it's a superhero, you got to have a line of movies, right?
Yep. So anyway, how would you give this? What were your overall thoughts?
I would give it this. I'd give it a thumbs up. Also, IMDb, I found out is owned by Amazon, so I wouldn't trust really any of the ratings. I'm sure Amazon maybe tweaks it since this is an Amazon property, as well as Rings of Power. So I don't know.
They do, and that's a great segue into our next. We might as well hit the nail. And then and I believe they've owned IMDb since the late '90s or whatever. But I saw the Quartering did a video on some properties that Amazon owned, and then Rotten Tomatoes is owned by a joint venture between NBC and HBO or Warner Brothers, essentially. So the fact of the matter is that these things have been owned lock, stock, and barrel by a vertical monopoly, a vertically integrated company for a very long time now. So that's why, like I say, like you should definitely take these things like it. That's why that alludes back to what I was saying before, which is it is a popularity contest, and sometimes the most popular folks cheat, and even if they didn't cheat, there's no way that we will ever know unless they actually say something right or wrong or somewhere in between. So this is kind of like it's kind of like when the government or police get in trouble and they're like, oh, hold on, we'll investigate ourselves.
And I've never put much into numbers. I mean, numbers are numbers. I don't really care. I would recommend if you're interested about if a movie's good or not, I would recommend watching some of the guys on YouTube that review movies, and maybe watch a movie or two, a review of a movie that you've seen before. See if that reviewer is in line with your way of thinking, the way you like movies, so that in the future, if you're kind of curious whether or not you'll like a movie, you could watch your favorite reviewer and see, oh, okay, he liked it. Maybe I'll like it. That's how I do it.
Yeah, and if I could piggyback on you, I do the same. And not necessarily like is toting a line per se, but in taste, in general taste is what I think Thomas is saying. Like, so it's not that you're always going to land on the same numbers or scores or thumbs or whatever the hell it is. But and that's why I remember my dad being such a big connoisseur of Siskel and Ebert growing up, and I always grew up with those guys until they, unfortunately, essentially passed away. But those guys were great. Growing up, Chicago Sun Times, and like kind of, I would like to see every weekend or so. When my dad, when we were all together, like we would sometimes kind of catch the, I don't know, where they'd play a clip of it on some news show or something, like as like a syndicated clip or whatever for Siskel and Ebert, like Sunday nights or Saturday nights, something like that. That was way back in the day. But yeah, anyway, so speaking of these reviews and why we're that whole spiel with that is that, and it seems like nowadays you don't know who to trust, right? So that's why it was the sage advice from Thomas about that. But apparently Amazon is saying that there are things that are so bad that it's the same thing. It's the POV or POC shield. I heard that. That's probably the best way. Like basically racist, sexist, trolls. Basically, if it goes below a certain number, that's bad faith on all these reviews. And
those darn trolls.
Right. And there are article after article after article. So basically what happened was Amazon Prime suspends the ratings of Rings of Power after review bombing occurs, whatever. This is nothing new. This has been around since the time that there was a radio call-in show. And
just get rid of ratings. Just get rid of it.
Right.
I mean, I'm serious. Just get rid of it. I mean, who really benefits from ratings? I know it makes the individual person on I guess online that say I'm gonna downvote this because I don't like it because XYZ, whatever. It's like, okay. But I don't know where the fight is.
To me it leaves, and every time this comes up, and this kind of goes hand in hand with the soapbox that I did weeks ago and I touched on repeatedly over here, like where you pick, and I am not original in saying this, but I'm a little bit more civil about it, other than some folks take it to the extreme and they make a lot of money off of it too. That's one thing. One is what are you being sold is always a good first question, no matter what you're doing or seeing or whatever. What are you being sold? And this thing where you constantly have to lump everything in with and try to get this narrative. That's one thing that hasn't been around before. It used to be something was horrible. The big main companies, they were faceless. They were they had their name out there and they just ignored it because that's exactly what they did, because there was no direct return on feedback from the fandom or the Nerdom, as it were.
Right. I think the ratings, to clarify a little bit, they don't mean anything to me when I go into like Tomatoes. I see the percentage and I say, oh, okay, right. That's cute. What are people actually saying about it? So right. I value the comments way more than, and if someone can actually structure a sentence first off and then tell me in a coherent way what they feel about the movie, I'm going to value that way more than someone that scribbles movie bad.
Right. Good faith criticism. Criticism. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, and you know what? It's so funny because in so many, and I think this is true, and I'm not saying anything unique, but we just had, and I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but we just had a very big political leader on one side of the American spectrum just make a big speech and then essentially saying unity, and then blaming it on half of the other country, literally. And then you have the same dynamic. I don't mean politics wise. I just mean in general, like the same, like if something doesn't happen the way that you like it or whatever, all of a sudden it's either us or them. And that has been pervasive throughout our culture, unfortunately, where it is kind of down the middle, and either you're here or you're there. And if you're not, then but wait, I agree. If there's good faith criticism and there's well thought out thoughts behind it, they of course they're a whole human being and they have other views of other things. But what do I care about it affecting this for the other thing? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But in any case, it just gets to me. where it's just like, you guys are the ones that are supposed to be making entertainment and entertainment is supposed to be like, non corporeal. It's supposed to be like cultural touchstones. It's supposed to be it's supposed to be like where everybody kind of just checks all their shit at the door. And when everybody sits down, it's just a movie. But we can't even have that anymore. Like, so it's just amazing to me. It's just amazing to me that there's these same calls for unity and these same calls for like, come on guys, when and whatever side you're on the fence, it's just like, no, you're no, life is not like that. Life is not like that.
And that goes back to caveman days when Rock, he would make his little image on the wall. Everybody would gather around the fire and watch his magic, him putting up a story up on the wall. He didn't go, Goran, you go over in the corner. You don't get to watch because you don't like big bad animal. It's supposed to bring everybody together.
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing is like then it's kind of like the next question is, well, follow the money. Right. So what are they selling me? Is the next best thing. And just these things like where this is just the latest and that this is going to keep happening. Like companies think they can get away with this and they think that they can control the all this. And again, this is about control. And the thing is that like at the end of the day, people are you're just eroding your trust. Any goodwill that you had is like, like it can evaporate overnight when you start picking fights with the fans, and you just ignore it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sorry, you are not going to convince me that there are. I'm just making it up. Let's just say you have a nation of 500 million people or something like that, and you're going to tell me that like over half of the country or whatever is literally like racist, or literally like they get their jimmies get rustled so bad that they're burning effigies to these things. Come on, man. Come on. Anyway, it rings hollow is what it is. And right. Like you, like obviously you can definitely see your reaction to it is like, whoa, if you're going to be doing this now, well, I can't trust what you say now. Like I can't ever, like, well.
And I grew up, I'm a Gen Xer, I was when the big rebels back in the day. I trust no one over whatever age. I'm that age, right. And I still don't trust the fuckers. Excuse my French. Right. But yeah. So yeah, I always look at things through I don't look through things in rose-colored glasses, so to speak. So I always look for what's not being said as to what's being said. So right. Yeah, I recommend that to anyone out there. Just don't trust everything that's on the page. If something doesn't hit you right, it may be wrong. So do a little research and on your own and look at multiple sources. Don't look at one. Look at multiple. If it means something to you. If you don't care, you don't care. Hey, live your life. Right. Be free. But yeah. So yeah, getting. I think we kind of went off the road a little bit, but yeah.
I think it's okay. I think it's warranted. The whole point is that we both have some strong, and it's not just us, like right. So like we're very mild in our takes here, but it just just a grain of salt.
Yeah. Just
anyway. So with that being said, I don't know if you wanted to lead into the main event here, like so.
Yeah. Well, I have one last thing to say.
Yeah, please.
Oh, and bring up Scorn of Gorn. He started with my Mego action figure a few episodes back. I brought him on board. And I thought we bring in every once in a while when we have a battle between two things, like back in the day we had the Beatles versus Elvis, the big clash. Everybody took sides, which ones they loved the most, and then later on more nerdy was Star Wars versus Star Trek. I like Star Trek, I like Star Wars. There's a big battle there.
Oh yeah. And so that's true. That's classic.
Yep. And so now we have the House of Dragons versus Rings of Power. So I thought we would bring in a segment, the Scorn of Gorn, when two guys enter the ring. One guy wins and the other gets the Scorn of Gorn. And also Scorn of Gorns for anything we dislike. And before we get into the main event, I'm going to talk about, and this kind of ties into the main event, those darn streaming apps. I hate most of the streaming apps, especially the HBO Max streaming app. The first time I watched, I started the first episode of House of Dragons. It started off, and I was like, what language are they talking? They're talking multiple languages at one time. There was English, and then Czech was checked for the language. So it was playing Czech over English. So I had to go into the app and turn that off. And lately there's been a glitch lately that when I finish an episode of any series, no matter, and this is on multiple series, once I finish an episode and then go back the next day to watch the next episode, it's still on the previous episode with about 10 minutes being watched on it. And so then I have to go in, and so I can't automatically do autoplay. I have to go in to series, the series information, and then click the next episode. I don't know if anyone else has that stupid glitch, but
that's weird.
The best app, movie app there is obviously Netflix, because they've been doing it forever. But yeah, I've seen various glitches with the Disney app. Their Paramount Plus app is dog too. It'll whenever you're, if you do a lot of stuff, with it, a lot of times it'll just stop responding. It's like, nah, it'll make a bump sound like I heard you, but I'm not gonna do anything. So then you have to kill the app and restart it.
Yeah, if I could get on that box a little bit too, and I primarily use the NVIDIA Shield as my main media device connected to my TV, and I all the apps are on it. It works. It's always updated from NVIDIA. It's somewhat cheap now. When it first came out, it was not cheap, but it's very reasonable. It's lasted for years. It's going to continue. You get very good value out of it. And saying the next best streaming stick would be like maybe Fire TV stick or whatever the hell they call it. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, I was using the Roku on my Roku app on my, well, it's Roku
smart
TV. So it's a smart TV, more like dumb TV. Am I right?
I would say, I would say for sure the HBO Max app, when it first came out, or like when it was like the first thing, like a few years ago or whatever, even a year or two going, like maybe a year ago, it would do something weird with Android TV, and it would jack with it, and it was unstable. Then they fix it for a little bit. Now, honestly, the biggest complaint I have, Disney Plus, Netflix, all of those guys, YouTube, even YouTube TV. When you sign in on a smart device or whatever, there's no keyboard or mouse, right? Even with your phone, you're not trying to do your password or whatever. But and most of the time they have like a really cool, go to this website /activate blah 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 whatever, and then you put a little code in, then it signs you in, and it's all good. But the problem with this is like HBO Max doesn't have that on Android TV, and it drives me up a friggin' wall, because it's just like, you know what, I'm not gonna get a keyboard, and like I'm just like, I don't know. I had to reset it for some reason. It lost its credentials, and like I don't know why it used to. Anyway, it's just so stupid. But like, why you make it so hard for me to sign in?
Curses.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they have a long way to go. Probably the best one is YouTube, in my opinion.
Yeah, YouTube, Netflix, Hulu. I haven't had any problems with. And then those are the top three for me. And then I guess Amazon. I don't have any praise or very many negative things to say about that one. But
it works.
Yeah. And then in the doghouse is HBO Max, Disney, and Paramount Plus. I have no idea about Peacock. And yes, I am got plenty of streaming services. I know, but I have no cable. So yeah.
Same here. Yep. Same here. Yep. Cool.
I've cut the plug and plugged myself into all sorts of streaming services.
Same here. Like many folks. With that
all
being
right,
said,
so we've kind of danced around it long enough, right?
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to lead into it. We'll just kind of flip back and forth, whatever. But what were your thoughts? So I've heard a spectrum of opinions, all the way from I already knew the hate watcher. So to be honest with you, I really haven't watched a lot on the hate watch side because I already knew what their opinion would be, and I really don't care. At a certain point, you got to cut it off and you got to move on. And then, I was surprised, like some of the more YouTubers that I respect, some gave it as high as I think the one I saw on the high was like Joe Blow Movies or something, YouTube guy. He's pretty solid. I don't know his pedigree or anything. I don't really care. He gave it as high as like a 9. There's another gentleman who gave it more of like a Nerd of the Rings, which is a newer YouTube channel that I kind of stumbled into over the course of the last several months. He gave it a 8 out of 10. And then I've seen more along the lines of, like more on that fence of like 5, 6, that kind of resting there.
Yep.
What did you think? I'm curious.
I watched the spectrum. Not a lot. I just watched a couple of things, one on each side. Like I watched our pal Overlord DVD Doomcock. He didn't like it. He didn't like it at all. He did. And he's more of a Tolkien expert, so to speak. And I think a lot of Tolkien experts that are deep into the lore, a lot of them I have a problem with it. And I think it's more on the lore side of things. And that's understandable. I mean, if you're deep into, if that's your bag, because I was majorly into Star Wars, and then when the sequels, Disney sequels came out, I had a lot of major problems with it because I was such a huge Star Wars fan. And then people that weren't as big into Star Wars, they enjoyed them. A lot of them enjoyed it. So hey, teach your own. But yeah, so I can understand people that disliked it because of the playing with the lore and whatnot. Right. And then I think they have some built-in biases that were there, and I think a lot of it's due to Amazon's mishandling of the promotion of the show and their tone deaf reactions to some of the fans.
Right. Heavy-handed.
It came kind of adversarial. And that's even though there's ways you can see the dislikes on Amazon, not Amazon, on YouTube, and on that premiere episode, the premiere trailer, there's like over 1 million dislikes on it, and that says something. That absolutely says something. And there's only the thumbs ups are only in the thousands. Over 1 million people gathered together, and it's like, no, I don't want this. So that tells you they did a horrible job of promotion of the show.
If I could for a second, like the thing with the Tolkien fans, and I'm gonna butcher that, Tolkien, whatever. I don't care. You know what? You don't like it.
I always said Tolkien.
Tolkien, whatever. Yeah, I don't give two shits if I said it wrong. Oh well, whatever. Whatever. I'm a filthy casual anyway. So what do you care? The thing is that like those folks have been, I covered this because it just kind of hit my general thing. Like a lot of things hit the YouTube verse, whatever. And most of you get sick of it after a while. Sometimes you pay attention. Sometimes it's interesting. If anything, I'll watch the ones that like help me understand the story a little bit better. So like there'll be breakdowns that will actually go into like why this means this way and that way. So like inside baseball nerd me loves that to a certain point. But the thing is like all these Tolkien hardcore guys for months and weeks and months and months have literally been sallying out in front of the Amazon Prime castle and asking for a fight. Okay. So they've been spoiling for a fight for months and months and months and months. And the best thing that Amazon Prime could have ever possibly done was to not give them one. Okay. Right. Why you're Amazon Prime? Why do you even give two shits? Whether it's 1 million or 20 million or whatever, like don't give them a fight. This is what I go back and forth. Like, if you don't show up, there can't be a fight. And if they're gonna yell and scream online, let them yell and scream online. They wanted to have a fight anyway. So why are you giving them one? You know what I mean? Like the thing is, it elevates whenever you go after your opponent like that, it elevates them. It automatically recognizes them as a threat. And when you do that, you elevate them to a level that maybe or may not be warranted. But it damn sure wouldn't have happened if you wouldn't have given them a fight. You know what I mean? Like that just doesn't make any sense to me. Like, what, you're the most powerful friggin' company, like you're worth trillions of dollars or something, you know? I mean, you're in everybody's household. You already have that. You need no goodwill. Okay. Right. All you need to do is deliver a product on time that you said you were going to do. And then who cares if it's a flop or or whatever, or if it is, or if it isn't, you're so big, it's never going to fail. Let's put it that way. This thing was never in danger of failing, no matter what or who anybody said, because just the sheer amount of money around it, you know, like it's just insane. It's insane. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. This goes back. But anyway, getting to the heart of the matter, though. What were your? So they released 2 episodes anyway, kind of pulling it back on track.
Right. Yeah, and to get the point, I saw that video where the guy was detracting it. I also watched. This is after I watched the 2 episodes. I wanted my own opinion before I watched anybody's opinion on it. But yeah, I watched that one, and then I watched one. The Kind of Funny channel. They had a kind of a review series, and Andrew Cortez and I forget the lady's name, but they watched it. They were Lord of the Rings fans of the movies. They aren't deep into the books or whatnot. Right. So they were more or less, they loved the movies. They do know some of the lore from the books, but so yeah, they really enjoyed it. They were able to point out the things that they did. There were some things they disliked about it, but yeah, they gave a very, very good review of it, and one of them was very much anticipating it, and the other one was also anticipating it but kind of dreading it, thinking it was going to be bad, but she was pleasantly surprised overall of it. And and to be honest, I think my feelings towards the 2 episodes that we've seen, or at least I've seen so far, I enjoy it, and it kind of like with the Kind of Funny's kind of slant on it. It's obviously it's based off the appendix of Lord of the Rings. It's not based off of the Lord of the Rings. It's not based off of the Silmarillion. They can't use that stuff. So they're very handy as far as what they can call things. And in the I think during that time period, the hobbits aren't around, the ancestors, the Hardfoots are around, and so there's things.
Hardfoots are the hobbits, or the generic shop and save branded hobbits.
And so it's based off appendixes, so there's not like a deep story with characters and dialogue and characteristics of characters that they can base or even write scenes off of. So this is all fully out of cloth, you know. They're coming up with it themselves, so it's more or less, and there's no J.R. Tolkien's long gone, so you can't oversee it. And so, yeah, this is me fan fiction, and it's well, for the most part, well written fan fiction with interesting characters, and I enjoyed it.
It's good. That's awesome. Yeah, I don't have anything to hate on in this, whether it's pure Tolkien or whatever, or the amount of money spent. I really don't care. I just being, and I kind of talked with you a little bit. I already have a kind of I'm already a hard case anyway, because I'm not really a fantasy guy in general. Like, believe it or not, that's just not the waters that I like to roll in. My bag is sci-fi and sci-fi novels primarily. Like comic books. That my comic book knowledge has expanded exponentially thanks to you. On that, I definitely had my favorites growing up and whatnot, just as a casual, nostalgia fan or whatever. But like, I wanted to, before for the most part, I didn't have a problem with this. It's not really my bag. It was interesting enough. I don't know that I'm going to stick with this. I definitely am going to see season or episode 3. Like, I know when we talked, I was trying to get in through the first episode, and I did, and then I watched, for the most part, I watched the majority of episode 2, but for the most part, like, it wasn't like super compelling, but it wasn't like super. It was interesting enough. The visuals were really good. Some of the things, like, I'm not going to get into the whole thing because, you know what, I'm not a set designer. I have no idea. I don't really care. All I care about is, like, if I see something and then it takes me out of the story, I have a bigger problem with that than anything else. None of that happened when I saw this. So,
and to go a little bit more in depth on what, like, I did enjoy it. I was only going to watch the first episode, but I enjoyed the first episode so much I watched the second one right after. I was going to save the second one for a little later, but yeah, I really enjoyed it, and I had the pace of the first episode was a little bit slow. Second one was a little bit better paced. I enjoyed that, and then one of the criticisms of the show is that Gladriel is sort of like the badass woman that fights everything, and all the elf men were like, oh, but have you watched Lord of the Rings? Legolas, he was a badass too, and they're elves. Elves, we don't know how strong elves are. We have no idea. I don't know. I'm sure there's a nerd out there that can fight me on that, but I don't care. So there. She could be a badass, right? She's an elf, and it's fantasy. Come on, it's fantasy. So, so I have no problem with if they want to make a badass character. Now, Gladriel is a character that was in Lord of the Rings, and the Gladriel that we saw in the Lord of the Rings far different from the younger version of her, which some people have issues with. I don't have a problem with it. When I was in my 20s, I was vastly different than I am now. So yeah, I was a little bit more, a little bit crazier, a little bit more, willing to risk things and maybe challenge things a little bit more. And that's the way that character is here. So over her hundreds of years, to when you get to Lord of the Rings, a little bit different person. So yeah, I maybe the edges are a little bit softer now, but yeah, I could see maybe someone would want that character from Lord of the Rings more like the character in this show, and if that's your hang up, then I understand. That character's just not for you. And also, yeah, with the hard, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to add with the hard feet characters, the hobbits. Frodo and Sam, the two guy characters, they went with two female characters that are kind of carbon copies of Frodo and Sam. and I much prefer this in Rings of Power, which is a totally new story, as opposed to them redoing Lord of the Rings and putting two female characters in as Frodo and Sam. Yeah, they want to do something different. They created two new characters. I love it. You're going to tell their perspective. Cool. I'm willing to watch that. And I like that they're not gathering everybody up for a big quest. The storyline, they're following several different characters in several different settings, and each of the characters are interesting to me. All of the settings are interesting. I want to know more about each of them.
In recent history, and being fair and absolute benefit of that, I will say this. So when you had Star Wars, and I've seen this loose comparison, you had the original Star Wars, and it followed its own formula, its own thing. Of course, everything was limited and constrained by budget, by this, by that. Creativity, when it's limited, you have absolutely amazing storylines that came out. And I will say this. All right, so you had the Force Awakens, and basically it was a redo of A New Hope. Essentially, it was a re-roll, a slightly different thing, whatever. So the same storyline essentially happened in Maverick, in bits and pieces for the most part. It's a classic thing where all they did was they played it safe. They did this. The Force Awakens was fine. That was a very good first roll for the most part. we didn't get out on a limb and cut our own throats until later on in the show. By that point, I had fallen off a cliff anyway, so I never to return. I will say this. So you have this kind of the same re-roll of how they're doing this and laying it out. And you got to remember, this is going to be 5 years and a total of 50 episodes. So what, we're already down 48. We have 48 more to go. I will say this, that where they're cloning
this season is only going to be 8 episodes.
Right. This season one, right? Yeah. But I'm talking globally.
Okay,
globally, like it's going to be like 50 episodes in 5 years or whatever that looks like. Whatever. Yeah. That's just what I've read. Broad brushstrokes. And if that changes, whatever. But for the most part, they've taken the right aspects.
Yeah, Amazon's of the storyline. Hoping for 50.
Well, that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's what I've heard anyway. But like, they're definitely not just doing one season. Okay, we can all agree on that. Like, it's not just going to be like one season. It's going to be however many seasons it is. But it's already got funding. It's already happened. They're not in a bad way here. Where they started out, they could have come out a lot worse. I don't think that it's warranted to be the absolute worst piece of garbage ever. Absolutely not. That's ridiculous. And they've copied aspects of it. They want to keep you sticking around. They want to find those characters. Now, if I could, if you will, go back with me in time here to the original, the Lord of the Rings, the Fellowship of the. This is right, for sure. Yeah, 2001, 2002, 2003. God, that seems like it was like I remember waiting for these movies to come out, and I saw each one of them when they hit the theaters. And the only thing that I would criticize about the original movies was I can't remember. Essentially, it was like a movie like where it was just 3 hours of walking. And that was directly from the novels, like where there was a big chunk of time, like where they have to get to where they need to go. And I just remember like being like, oh, Jesus Christ, like it's 3 hours of, it's just 3 hours of walking. Like I'm being really short with it, but it was still good. But I think it was this one, but I could be wrong. I can't remember exactly, but all these are beloved by the thing. And, you know, it was fine. We'll see how it goes. But you know, hats off to them. They did something new and creative. And at the end of the day, is it going to get, I really didn't, aside from like, I Am Woman, Hear Me Roar, like where, Guy Ladriel, I think it's the kind of the trope. I think that they needed, you know, that this is a thing. And you know what? It's fair because like you said, Legolas was like freaking awesome. You know, he was dead-eye shot every time, you know, he could do no wrong. So like, I don't see any problem with that. You know what?
Yeah, if Gladriel is a Mary Sue, which there's a very good argument for that. Legolas is also a Mary Sue.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I'm you know what? I'm here for it. I don't really care if the hero or the heroine is whatever, as long as they follow through on that, you know, like whatever. Like, I'm not going to get it. The only thing that I would caution would be these Tolkien nerds. I will say this. I'm going to pat them on the butt a little bit. The kind of the same thing happens with Linux. Okay, and if you're familiar on the technical side, if you get into the weeds with the Linux nerds, the read the effing manual nerds, like that they're just very hostile to new users and or that's the stereotype that's given. The Tolkien nerds kind of strike me as the same way of like they're assholes first, and then they're a little bit softer on the Tolkien side, I'll admit. But the worst nerds in the world, in my opinion, if you want to get into a fight with anybody on the technology side or the hardcore Linux, now they're dying out as time goes on because Linux has broadened to be a thing like the more common technology. It's not just the folks back in 20 years ago. If you were in a Linux, nobody knew about it unless you were doing something specific to that. It was not as glorious as it is today, I would say. But those kind of nerds are some of the worst nerds in the world. Even if you're a technology professional or whatever, you're coming into it, like some of those nerds are the worst nerds in the world, in my opinion, because they read the effing manual. They're even worse than the Mac nerds that are the reality distortion people that like they're Steve Jobs and Apple could do no wrong, and you had the Windows nerds or whatever. But like either way, yeah, you could still kind of talk to those folks. But you know, if it's not for you, then don't watch it. You know, don't watch it. Of course, the folks that we're talking about are out there to make a buck. Again, follow the money. What are they? You know, what is the thing out there that they're looking for? But let this thing ride. Let's see where it goes. I do know one thing.
Let it breathe. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you gotta let it breathe. You gotta let the story breathe. This kind of like where this thing, like, I really wish that they wouldn't touch the ratings and just like let it go. Because if that's the case, and you truly do have a tidal wave of trolls or something trying to do something, that's going to become apparent. If you let it happen, then you have goodwill on your side because people can clearly see that people are coming out of the woodwork for some reason or another, other than actually watching it. And I don't know how you're going to verify that everybody's actually ever seen every square minute of it. Like, who's the arbiter of that? Again, black box, nobody knows. So you can't trust. So both sides, in my opinion, have broken the faith, bad faith on both sides. But for the most part, you know, I'm really looking forward to watching this with my kiddos. Yeah. At the end of the day, no matter what any talking head does, if I can sit down and watch it and it captivates my kids, I know it's good enough, you know. And what more could you ask for than that? Like, I don't have an agenda aside from like watching this, and I don't have time to sit here and regale. But anyway, I think fair shake. I don't know. I'm not going to really give it a rating until the whole thing comes out. I'll kind of break with that. But I would say it warrants eyeballs on it. And let your conscience be your guide. And if you like it, you like it. You know?
Just watch it. Yeah, I heard all the bad press, so to speak, or at least all the people out there that were giving their opinion on YouTube and elsewhere. And you know, a lot of negativity, but I never let that sway my opinion. Right. And I, again, watched it with fresh eyes, and like you, I love the Lord of the Rings movies. I was a huge Peter Jackson fan way before Lord of the Rings. I was into all of his indie horror movies that he produced, so I was totally ecstatic when he was making Lord of the Rings, and that's sort of like capturing lightning in a bottle. I think everything kind of coalesced. They had a great movie company that was making it with them, and that were really behind them. That was all gung-ho to film all three movies at one time, which was unheard of at the time. That's such a huge thing. It could have really sunk the movie company, but they had faith in the project. It came out and everybody loved it. So to recapture that lightning in a bottle, it's very rare. I don't think you can compare. Obviously, you can compare it, but you're not going to get the same heights of those movies as you're not going to get the same thing in Rings of Power. You have to judge it on its own merits. Like I said, I enjoyed it. It's a good movie or a good show. The story is good. The acting is good. All the characters. One of the characters that people were commenting about, it was the princess of the dwarves. Yeah. Right. I loved her. I loved her as a character. I loved her too. She was great in the show, and her and her husband are sort of like the standout characters for me so far in the series.
With Durin, right? And one of the Durin 2. I don't know, whatever. I'm not going to get. But and that's why I kind of wanted to say, like, more on the positive side of all this, like that I actually like that because it kind of gave a little bit of softness to that king, and you rarely see that, you know, for something like that. So I think they did a great job. But my only final kind of point that I would say is that I really enjoyed was, you want a good, solid opinion who's not lying to you, who's not blowing air up your, you know, blah, blah, blah. This gentleman's takedown of this was perfect. And why I say that is because it was fair, it was down the line, it was, and the other thing that I'll think you'll get value out of this is I am not a Tolkien nerd. Okay. I read it in high school, The Hobbit, and then later on I read the Lord of the Rings. That I read those classic novels. Didn't really get into anything beyond that, but I'm not a fantasy guy. And the same thing, kind of like I fell into the whole point of this is anything that is going to get you to open the door, open the book on something new that you're not familiar with. You're going to get you're the beautiful thing about this is no matter how you come at this, whether I doubt that there's too many people that have seen. Oh, of course, there's a lot more that has not seen Peter Jackson's famous film than have seen it. So anything that's a gateway to any of this stuff, to the nerddom, is a-okay by me. So like they might have some rises and falls here or there. I don't care. I only recommend this channel and his take on it because it's down the line. It's kind of a little bit with not with rose-colored glasses, but with the definite love of wanting to spread this out. And I think that's how this goes in the best light possible. Good faith, if you will. But this is also good because it kind of understands and it breaks down what the hell you're seeing. Because I'm going to be honest with you, aside from like kind of being pumped, like with a little bit of extra newly acquired Tolkien knowledge or whatever, I still like the breakdowns, like where you get an enhancement of like, oh, that's why that happened or whatever, da 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 da. Mm-hmm. But shout out to Nerd of the Rings. It's just a good take on it. You're going to get enhanced value out of all this too, like mm-hmm. if you care to kind of dive in and like, what is this decent? What is this Durin character? What is this Gladriel character about? What is this? What is the second age? What is the first age? What does all this mean? Like all this stuff that is just, just circles back. All roads point to Rome, right? So
and like you said, you weren't going to make a fully formed opinion until if you do watch the whole season or whole series, and that's true. And then that was the only thing in the back of my mind is, okay, we know how the villain that she's fighting carries over into, or she's trying to track down, is the same villain that's in Lord of the Rings. So how are they going to make a satisfying ending to this series was my question. And hopefully they've conquered that, they've figured it out, and I'll be pleasantly surprised. But yeah, that was my only kind of what if thing that was kind of in the back of my mind on it. But yeah, as far as and again, we have the Gladriel as the kind of the Mary Sue of the thing, and I know we did a grab bag where a YouTuber kind of went over the history of Mary Sue, mm-hmm. But and that's you can watch that. But it's, if you're going to do kind of like a Mary Sue character, and it could be claimed that Harry Potter, Superman, Conan the Barbarian, all of those are kind of Mary Sue's. And the thing about Mary Sue is it's kind of tied to bad writing. So if you have a Mary Sue and it's badly written, then you've kind of shot yourself in the foot. Whereas if you take a Mary Sue character and write it well to the point where you inspire people to watch, and it's very engaging, and it's very hard to do with the Mary Sue character, then you've kind of cracked the code. So it's very hard to write for Superman, I would believe, but yeah, when people do it right, they get it right. So
I don't see like where there was I don't know about you, but I have yet to see any kind of political influence or like unnecessary modern dictating down from thing that just breaks, that has definitely been part and parcel of the storyline. It kills the story, or it kills the plot, or kills the character, and there's just no interest there. I didn't get any of that from this at all. I want to be clear too.
The only thing you could maybe throw at it, and people have thrown at it, is it's very, very female centric. You have Gladriel, the hard hitting elf, and then you have the two Hardfoot characters. They're going off and discovering this man that came from the skies, and that's very female centric. story with them. And then there's that village of the humans where the village people aren't listening to the woman saying that they're being invaded by orcs or whatever. And it wasn't until she cut off his head and showed it to him, to convince him. And it's all woman power, which, okay, but there's also some very strong male characters in there too. You're kind of overlooking those. And I don't have a problem with heavy female influence. I mean, nothing. Those outside Galadriel, who has special powers because she's an elf, nothing the other female characters do are out of character for a woman to do. They're not, jumping, flying around or something when there's.
I think one of the things that I'm very impressed with, and then I'll go on record on saying this, I'm going to piss off a lot of people, maybe, probably, and I really don't give a fuck.
You're the bad cop. You can say I'm the good cop.
Yeah,
the bad.
As far as gender goes in both House of the Dragon and this, I don't have any issues with like what has been portrayed, who the main characters were. No, I don't feel like I'm being force fed down the throat for any of these things, and I think that's a little bit disingenuous to assert that.
Right. As long as they're well written and you don't have like a normal 120-pound woman lifting up a car, throwing it. As long as there's like a certain thing, say they have superpowers because they're elves. Okay. You got me. It's fantasy. That's all you gotta do. But yeah, they're not doing anything. To break reality for a fantasy world.
Right. Yeah. None of this stuff breaks any of those bounds or the limits that are whatever. If anything, I think we're going to get a really interesting storyline for the orcs and for some of there's just so much of Middle Earth that we don't know about, that you can like look at a map. I don't know about you, but like I've looked at a map, like when they publish them or whatever, you kind of look across and let your imagination kind of roam and like, I wonder what it's like, and that's the whole point of what you're supposed to be doing with any of these things. Yep. It's supposed to inspire even more imagination from this. It again, the good things keep you coming back for more. Like I want to see more. I think both of these hit that on the head. And the thing is that with House of D, Hot D, damn. I mean, George R.R. Martin is not a nursery story. A storyteller. If you've read any of his books, it is fraught with like the most brutal. Matter of fact, if you're going to talk about like what's ever going to be popular, nobody 20 years ago, somebody could have told, I think you said this a little bit ago, like somebody could have told you like 20, 30 years ago, George R.R. Martin is actually going to become mainstream. I think you would have probably looked at that person and been like, what drugs are you on? So again, that's the same thing for Dune, or this complicated books that are very complicated and have depth to them, 20 years ago, but there we are. Anyway.
And then kind of putting a cap on Rings of Power. Yeah, I like your map analogy because they do actually use the map in Rings of Power to show you where the locations are, which is really helpful, and I really like that touch to it. And it really shows you where everything is and telling you that it's a very broad story. This is very high fantasy, very epic story with multiple characters going across, and I'm sure at one point all of them will maybe meet up at one point or carry, make a journey. Whereas House of the Dragon is much more insular, more personal story. It's not high fantasy. It's all about the interpersonal relations.
It's one fixture. Characters. Lord of the Rings and the Power of the Rings has always been about this epic tale, in the finest sense of the word of good versus evil, right? And again, you did not get that immediate good versus evil battle for the original movies. Okay, this is a drum up to it. This is the journey to get to that final, whatever the final thing is or whatever. For when they get there, we'll know about it, in season whatever the hell it is. And whereas House of Dragon, it is not about that at all. That is not Tolkien, or that is not Tolkien, and they don't give a shit about good or versus evil. They really don't. Not in George R.R. Martin. It's more about the singular throne, Westeros, and the things that have been in and out about that from that central kind of worldview. They kind of take you out a little bit to expand the storyline, but for the most part, they could be two different things. They are two vastly different things. About one is about the ultimate buildup of good to evil, good versus evil, and then the other one is about internal politics, about Westeros and the Iron Throne.
Yeah.
Period.
There's no good or evil in House of the Dragon. It's all about the various shades within a person.
Right.
And, some people could lean more towards the good, and others lean more towards the bad. But yeah, there's not like a there is like there is a protagonist and antagonist or whatever, but you understand their motivations. They're human. They're not this overarching evil.
And if you're going to boil down George R.R. Martin's thing, if you're going to boil it down to a central theme, aside from might makes right and all this, it's more about the battle of individual hearts and what happens in those individual characters and what they do when and why they pick what they pick. Is the story, and it kind of goes from there. And there is no purebred white or black. It's none of that. No.
Yeah. And it's very clear what their flaws are and how those flaws lead them to pick what they do. I guess their flaws and their good points both weigh in the decisions they make. You understand which way they slide to make those decisions. And also House of the Dragon benefits from George R.R. Martin being alive and being very invested in the show.
Hands down.
Yeah, and
hands
being
down.
an active participant in this. And so I think the two House of the Dragons better written. It's a better drama. But yeah, that's nothing
high drama.
Yeah, very very high drama, and the inner workings of the politics. Yeah, and it's dealing with the politics of Westeros, and so it's and you're not. They do it in a way that you're not going, oh well, that's in real life. That's sort of making fun of so and so, Biden or Trump. You don't see one-to-one comparisons within the show. So you don't know, you do, and rightly so, you don't know the political motivations of the creators. Whereas a lot of times, a lot of shows recently kind of wear their politics on their sleeve, so that you do know how they feel, and it pulls you out of the story.
Yeah, I would actually argue both of these properties are very much so you have like these kind of like more modern dramas or whatever, like where they're injected with certain kind of aspects of our political reality or whatever. Either one of these properties, that has nothing to do with anything. There are no modern day sensibilities. There are no woke, anti-woke. I'm sorry, I hate to break a bubble, but there's just that shit doesn't exist on either one of these battlegrounds for whichever you pick. And I would argue actually that of the two, it's head and shoulders. It's not even close. Okay, in my opinion, I agree with you fully. House of the Dragon is just superior in how the depth, the creativity, the everything else. Like as far as a product, but again, these are apples and oranges. Okay, put that out there. You can't really compare them, but we are. We are on this for the sake of views, so screw us, right? But anyway, like you have George R.R. Martin, you have this beautiful book that you can get into, which is it's not the Game of Thrones is based on the Song of Fire and Ice, and I think the other one is based on the Song of Fire, is something like that, whatever. But and it's not even like the best a George R.R. Martin novel there is. It's actually kind of panned as being like the lowest quality one, but still, you still get so much bang for your buck with that. It's just beautiful. It's horrific. It's ugly. It's gnarly. It's a soap opera in the finest sense of the word, with a serious take on it. And it definitely. I know you you put out something a couple weeks ago or a week ago about just being excited for seeing the when the episode starts, you have that theme song and it puts you right back right where you were when things were good with the Game of Thrones. Like I agree completely.
Yeah.
I can't tell you every single time Matt Smith is on the screen. Holy shit! Holy shit! It's amazing. It is. It's just this. He's deliciously evil. He's also deliciously heroic, which we saw in this last episode. Kind of dipping into it, and it's just. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and and they did. There's a meme about member berries. I think that comes from South Park. It's like, well, remember this, remember that, and Ready Player One is made up of just remember berries. It's like, oh, remember this, remember that. Whereas House of the Dragon, they expertly use that theme or the themes from the music from the previous show.
They did
kind of introduce
masterfully.
Masterfully introduce you to this series. To make you kind of clicks you into that mindset of, oh yeah, that was it. Now if they did that and the story wasn't there and all they did was make characters that were similar to Game of Thrones, is like
reheated leftovers.
Reheated leftovers, it wouldn't have worked. But they've got a cool story, very different story, and so that music kicks you into that place and it brings you into a great story. And so it's a good all around.
Yeah. Matter of fact, I have actually, I am totally fan crushing on this. I'm a huge stan. Obviously, I'm not even going to hide it, nor should I. But I've already seen the second episode twice already. And I'm going to rewatch the third. Like, this is awesome. This is the pinnacle peak of fandom, like where you're entertained. And the remember berries are there, but they're not there. I mean, they are, but they're not. I mean, it's all the right things, and they crushed it.
We talked about how there's not like a true evil on this show, but hey, that crab man or crab feeder, he's pretty creepy. He's kind of just all around evil. Now, unfortunately, the crab feeder made me think of the episode of Always Sunny, where Charlie and what's his name, Danny DeVito's character, they got into Frank. They got into crab fishing, and and with the immortal line of Charlie saying, "We're crab people now." It made me think of that.
That's awesome. You see I can't you got to go see episode 3. There's no words that I can do to you just have to like watch it and experience it. And the thing is that is only going to be a force multiplier as time goes on, and we get however many series inspired by George R. R. Martin. And we both know that there's already a game plan for the next 10 years, maybe 15, maybe even longer. But they have plans for these things, and the more that they come out, as long as they don't screw it up, they're going to, if they can do this with this one, like the riches and treasures that we will see down the line are going to be amazing.
Keep the showrunners from the original series far away from any Game of Thrones properties to come. I think
every delay, every no they said, every no that Warner, they were a very good steward of their property. And I will give the highest praise that I could up till probably the first 10 years that Disney owned Star Wars. And I'll just go as far as Marvel. The first 10 years that Disney owned it, they were very, very good stewards of that IP. It's maybe it's a little bit their fault, maybe it's a little bit their fault, but we're oversaturated and it is what it is. But I mean, how many decades can you do?
Well,
this is the thing,
I always push back on oversaturation, because as long as it's good, there's no reason to not enjoy. If you have overabundance of something, as long as it's good, people keep coming back for more. But I think when you overextend yourself, maybe you try to do things that you think that you can, but you really can't, and you overextend yourself too far. You got too far away from the original vision, and for whatever, for better or for worse, the fans just didn't care for it. So, and then you're gonna go and blame the fans. You're gonna say, we just put too much out there at one time. But if it was good, people would have ate it up. That's my opinion on that.
We have this very weird, very new, kind of newish for the last 5 years or so, like where entertainment companies have glommed on to socio-political communications kind of principles in modern times, and they're starting to use those tools, those weapons, and it's not a good look for anybody. Like ruin comes from it very quickly. It just puts people off, and the worst thing ever is that you could turn people off to the property that you want them to watch or see or experience or whatever, and it's just not good. It's just not a good look. But obviously my heart lies with House of the Dragon. I'm really looking forward to watching Power of the Rings a second time with my kiddos, because ultimately that's the ultimate thing of like how I'm really curious to see how my kids take it, because they are pure as the driven snow. They've never seen Lord of the Rings. They've never been exposed to that kind of thing. And it'll just be interesting. Obviously, House of Dragon is off the table for them because it's not for kids.
Right.
But that's me. Maybe if they were, 16, 17, 18, different story maybe. But even probably then, probably not. But, that's goes without saying. But just this thing is like, Matt Smith is just, oh man, I don't know about you, but I am definitely got into modern day Doctor Who, and Matt Smith was a fundamental part of that. And I have some very, very fond Doctor Who memories of that, and he just can do no wrong. Essentially, like kind of like the other guy who did Sherlock Holmes and Doctor Strange. I can't Benedict Cumberbatch, whatever. He's great. He's a great fucking actor.
I enjoyed the new version of Doctor Who. I'm an old school Doctor Who fan. But Tom Baker is always my Doctor Who. But my nephews, they loved Doctor Who. In fact, my youngest nephew, for a while there, he always loved dressing up as the Matt Smith Doctor Who with the fez and the little suit and everything. But Matt Smith's great in it. And we won't go into spoiler territory, but there's a scene in the third episode where Matt Smith does something very recklessly, and it's the fact that you've built up a relationship with that character over 3 episodes. You absolutely know who that character is from what he's done in the past. And in that particular scene, what happens in it is so much weighted more that you know the character, you know what's going on. The actions in that scene is telegraphed so much more than if that scene was the first scene of the opening first episode. It would still have been cool, but you wouldn't have that same investment in the character that you do at that point. And it tells you so much about the character, and it's such a well executed scene that you really get into it and you love it. Whereas in Rings of Power, there's one of the opening scenes is Galadriel tracking down Sauron, and the elves face off against an ice troll, ice troll in the caves that they've seen the traces of Sauron in. And she does a really cool battle with the ice troll that some people have criticized because she's like OP in that. But yeah, she takes it down and kills it. It's a very cool action scene, but it really doesn't tell you much about the character. You aren't invested in her at that point. Right. So you don't get the same payoff that you do with the scene in House of Dragons. Again, it's apples and oranges, but it kind of shows you what can be done if you do have that investment in the character. Whereas like a lot of the action scenes today are much more like that in Rings of Power, where it's just a big action scene that's really cool to watch. But a lot of times, and I've said this in previous videos, sometimes I get lost, especially if they're a long battle scene. I get lost because all the action doesn't really mean anything to me. So it's a lot of this and that, and then after it, I was like, "What happened? I don't know." Whereas if it's action scene like it was in that third episode of House of Dragons, where you're invested in the character and you really want to see what happens to that character, those are the action scenes that really pay off for me. That aren't in it. And that scene isn't really flashy in House of Dragons. It's very well. It's got some long scenes to it. It's not super fast cut scene. You know what's going on. You see it. Whereas a lot of times in, especially Marvel movies, there's very fast cuts where you really can't tell sometimes what is even going on. But yeah, that's my speech on that.
Well, and the thing about Game of Thrones too is Jesus Christo, for crying out loud. Before you even saw the dragons or whatever for Game of Thrones, there was a multi-year investment there. So like, let's not forget about that. Like, so whereas this one, we're just starting at the gate with it, but it's even better because of how it kind of stacks up. And I agree, like for the Rings of Power, they have to use that sparingly, and you have to kind of like, you don't know necessarily who this person is or like why you should care. And it's handled a little bit more. It's more of like a fairy tale approach, I would say, more childlike in a sense, kind of thing. And it's grand at epic scale. And the whole thing is, you got to zoom out with Power of the Rings, period, because it is this big, long, epic fairy tale that is about good and evil. It is essentially a quintessential kids story, like from the standpoint of like good, evil. You know what I mean? And you're unpeeling the layers slowly over time.
I don't know. I would be hesitant to say children. Children obviously can read it and find a lot of enjoyment about it. But I think it's more of a Christian tale. J.R. Tolkien was very much a Christian, and he invested a lot of that into the Lord of the Rings. He wanted to tell. There was not a big tell that kind of exemplified England in his opinion. So he wrote Lord of the Rings as an exemplary legendary tale for England. And he invested it in his Christianity. And a lot of Christians do read Lord of the Rings and find enjoyment. My one of my best friends, Walter, he's very much a Christian, and he's rereading Lord of the Rings now, and he's really finding enjoyment out of it in that aspect. And so it's a more, like you said, pure tale of good versus evil, which children can immediately understand and be invested in it, but not detract from adults that can get a lot out of it as well, maybe more, in fact, from those stories. And it's written in especially the books are written in a way that may be daunting for a child, whereas the movies are much more user friendly.
I absolutely agree. Yeah, that's fair. I guess so. You have like a more of a Christian tale, like that is more heir apparent, like with Chronicles of Narnia. That whole thing is more kid. I would say that is definitely more kid like than not. And I'd say that the Rings of Power, as they stand, are somewhere in between, like the higher drama of, like, say, Tolkien and this. I'd say I would argue that it is just a little bit lesser than. But not by much, right? So it's lesser than it. Time will tell whether it deserves the mantle of what it's carrying. Ultimately, we'll see what happens. But as far as like that goes, Amazon made this to be somewhere in between, not kitty like Chronicle. And there is certainly, I read those books when I was growing up, and I loved them. And that's a whole different thing. Like the film treatment that got, nowhere near as good as the books, for sure. But all things being equal, it's somewhere in between that, like where they got to bridge that gap, like where it is it is geared to keep adult eyes on it, and that's like the great thing of like maybe not. And when I say I do not mean it is not appropriate. Rings of Power is not appropriate for like probably viewers under preteen age or something like that. I don't know. You use your best guide or whatever. Like some are going to be a little bit more free. It's not made for toddlers. I don't mean it's baby. I don't mean it's not made for toddlers. It's not made for Sesame Street, The Crowd, that kind of thing. It's made for like kids that are in their tweens that are ready for kind of like those bigger concepts that are out there. And when they scratch the surface, they're going to find that there's a back catalog of wonderful books that you'll fall into, that just like with George R.R. Martin, more for the adult crowd of like, it begs the thing of like, oh, I got to check this book out or whatever, whatever. But
and with the rings, go ahead.
I was going to say that is something that modern day Star Wars failed on. And what I mean by that is like it absolutely failed on the push to go search out more literature behind it. Just because like you're so far apart from that, in my opinion, then like say these, no matter how you cut it, Rings of Power is a lot closer to the source material. That begs you that there's this whole library out there for you to discover. Same thing for House of Dragons, and that's the best possible position that you can put any kind of IP in, which is to go search and discover more, especially if there's books to be had or whatever, like that. My opinion on Star Wars, I understand could be controversial, and that's fine. But that's just my take. Like, I'm not going to show up until there's a reason to, but that's a whole different story. But what are your thoughts on that take?
Right. With there's The Hobbit, which is very much a children's book, whereas Lord is for the later teens or early to later teens. But and I think the Rings of Power, obviously, in this non-Christian society, it's or less so than what it was in the past. I don't think they have that in mind. They're not striving for that. So that's neither here nor there. But yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. But and then also in the second episode of Rings of Power, no real spoilers, but there's a scene where a couple of people face off against an orc in a house, and it plays very much like a horror scene, and it does it quite well. And so yeah, there's that element. There's that scene, and maybe some of the more action scene, maybe like the one with the ice troll, that you might want to watch it beforehand before showing it to your kid to gauge whether or not the kid can take that. But yeah, that scene in episode 2 with the orc really impressed me and really engaged me to the point where it's like, man, that they could pull off horror and fantasy. That's great.
It was much sharper than The Hobbit. You're absolutely right about that. The Hobbit had some semi-scary, and you got to remember, of course, The Hobbit was made into a trilogy, which I don't think it helped. But aside from the money grab there are very scary scenes in that, and on the big screen there are. But you're right. That's why I kind of put that below. And on the quality spectrum, I think most people would put The Lord of the Rings, Peter Jackson, up here, and The Hobbit a little bit lower down here. Still had good value. Power of the Rings, I think, is somewhere in between, maybe whatever. I agree with you. It is a little bit more. That is very graphic. It is ahead. It is very graphic. It is not, again, the Power Rings is not for little kids until a parent has trained it and determined, maybe edited it, scrubbed it along the lines of that, for sure. But yeah, I want to see more at the end of the day. I definitely want to see more for House of the Dragon.
And again, it's, like you said, it's apples and oranges. Rings of Power is much more high fantasy, epic storyline, and it could be argued that Game of Thrones, the first series, was George R.R. Martin's take on high fantasy, in that it told a story that was epic in nature, but he kind of twisted it and made it more brutal and more realistic, and put in a very interesting twist in that respect, that really engaged the watcher that's used to high fantasy, and the fact that he's putting it on his head, making it more brutal, more realistic, it really engaged the audience and gave them something different. And so those are maybe more comparable if you compare Rings and the original Game of Thrones, whereas House of Dragons very much a family drama told in a grand scale. But yeah, it's a very at its core, it's a very interesting, intricate family drama with various motivations by all the characters. And since it's a family drama, and one thing that I'm really impressed and really like about it is the king, the father figure in this series, is actually a really good character. Has really good motivations, even though he's flawed and makes some bad decisions. He's actually a really good character, which is very weird and not is very atypical for these days. Normally, with a father especially in a sitcom or in any type of series lately, he's either the doofus or the guy that totally gets something wrong. He's a lot of the stories, he's the absentee father that's not there, who's maybe on drugs or whatever. There's you'd be very, very hard pressed to find a good father figure in any of the modern day storylines, where it's very odd to be able to point to House of Dragons and say, hey, that father's pretty cool.
Good call out. Yeah, and that's the thing that George R.R. Martin does amazingly good, amazingly detailed. Most of the kings are shit, in that line of Thrones. Like occasionally there's ones, and he definitely has a very strong relationship with his daughter. And I'm not gonna give up too much, but essentially, like, even when he is selfish, he always comes back and checks in with his daughter, with the love with his daughter, and that's true through and through. Ultimately, we'll see what kind of a king Viserys is. That's the king you're referring to with his daughter. I'm not Rain. I'm so hesitant to say that.
I think Rhaenyra. I think
Rhaenyra, which is the strong thing. And the thing about this is, like, they've already kind of prepped this, like, where they've already skipped in time, and it's only going to go further as they go forward and see what happens. But
there's going to be a change of actresses for her, which is going to be interesting, because I really love the performance by the girl currently. So it'll be interesting to see who takes her place, whether or not she can really carry it the way that this original actress is. It'll be interesting to see. I'm kind of curious why they didn't take maybe an older actress and in the earlier episodes maybe digitally de-aged her. I don't know why they didn't go that route. Maybe I can't see budget wise, because this thing has a huge budget to it. But I'm kind of curious.
I think we have an answer to that a little bit in the Samaritan, like, where they kind of do a little bit of de-aging CGI. And I would criticize it a little bit that it's still quite not there yet.
Well, I think with the Samaritan, they didn't have the budget. It's very low budget.
That's true, but there's even criticism, like when Luke, when they showed a CGI Luke in the end of season 1 of Mandalorian. Like, there was, I thought it was fine. I didn't have a problem with it, but there was a lot of folks that were grousing around the edges of, like, oh, it's just like this, and like they should have just done the real, whatever. I don't know, but
come on, you don't believe that in modern day film that, say, the Sandra Bullock or Julia Roberts, in their last few movies, they weren't de-aged in the process?
I'm sure they were.
Come on, I'm sure they've got it down to science. As far as if you take a 70-year-old man and make him 20, sure, it's not gonna come off very well. But if you're de-aging a 20-something-year-old woman down to her teens, that could be done.
I would say that you're right, but I would disagree still, because, like, if it were true, the only one that I can think of was the legendary, or the tale of Benjamin Button. where they had Brad Pitt, and it was like life.
That's a
it
20.
didn't matter.
That's a 15-year-old movie.
Yeah, very true. But they did it. Even then, there was some criticism of that. But at the same time, if you can call to mind any one of the Julia Roberts or the ones like where they were successful on, and I would argue that nobody talks about them. But I do think that the technology is there
because you can't really tell. I think
right.
they could have done it. But yeah, it's either here nor there as far as the quality of the story.
Right.
But yeah, that's just maybe a quibble that we can argue on.
I think it's fair to pick. And at the end of the day, I will always be on the side of more on the house of practical effects and real actors. You know what? If they're going to do that, they might as well. Maybe that's appropriate for certain parts and here and there. And this is getting the weeds, but then that's okay. But like at the end of the day, as long as it doesn't suck you out of the storyline, it's just like one more thing that could go wrong. So if they don't do it, then they don't have that problem. So that's all I would say. But you're right. The technology is there. And God knows how things are going to change for those special effects as the average common garden variety person can find tools and do these, fake AI, face, whatever. They say that if you turn to the side, all the illusions kind of drop unless you're like you have clusters of computers behind you, which most people don't. But in any case, I don't think you can go wrong either side of the equation. With Power of the Rings. Make up your own mind. I'm not going to say the only thing I'll say is keep watching. At the end of the first season, maybe in a few more episodes, like where I can give it a number rating. But honestly, number ratings mean nothing. At the end of the day, what's important is whether you watch it or not. And I would say just go in with horse blinders on and go enjoy it, see what you think. And then there's your answer.
And one of the things I thought, especially while watching Rings of Power, is that isn't it great that I have two fantasy shows that I'm looking forward to. That's a great place to be in, to have such great shows to watch. I like both of them, and like you said, I'm not gonna give my final opinion until the end of the season for both, as far as whether or not they were fully successful. But so far on the journey, they're both successful. Again, I like House of the Dragons more, but not to detract from Rings of Power either. They're both enjoyable. So in the battle between the two, I think House edges out Rings of Power, but I don't think
not even close.
Yeah, but neither one of them, in my opinion, deserves the scorn of Gorn.
Agreed. Absolutely agree with you wholeheartedly there. House of Dragon is retired
today.
House of Dragon is on a whole other level that it's impossible for any Tolkien anything to be on, because the creator has died, and it is what it is. So there is that. But for this, as far as Amazon goes, they're being stewards of this new thing. It's beautiful, and let's see where it goes. The tale of the tape will be told in 6 months,
and
in
I
a
think,
year, and in 2 years, and in 3 years, and how these things age is ultimately going to be the impactor of whether they're really truly good or not. I think that's true. And it's very apparent that House of the Dragon is already cleared that hurdle, in my opinion. It's going to be with us for a long time. Rings of Power. Who knows? We'll see. But it's not garbage like the people are saying. That's just not true. That's just not true.
Right. And IMDb, even though it's owned by Amazon, it's interesting looking at the number ratings. And again, I don't care about those, but it's kind of interesting. 6.8 on Rings of Power, which I would tend to agree with. Maybe a full 7. And then on House of Dragons, I noticed it was an 8.8. So I think those are both in range of what my opinion would be on those.
I'd say
currently.
Currently, we'll see. House of Dragon, I think, is way above 8.8, but then again, I've openly acknowledged that I'm a super fan. And if I didn't, then hopefully, I definitely think it's not so 8.8. It's definitely more like 8.9, 9.0 for sure on that end of the scale. But that's me personally. I have yet. we have yet to see a shitty episode of House of the Dragon, and it's going to happen. There's going to be naturally weaker episodes, just like it will happen for Power of the Rings. But no, not every single. I mean, it's possible, but at some point when you go into a seasonal show, you're going to have. We experienced that with Strange New Worlds. We experienced that with the first season of Next Generation, and I love that we did that, and nobody else has done that really to kind of hop on the way that we did. I think that we did great work there. And I think that we showcase that there's everything should be kind of taken in the context of that. And at the end of the day, if it keeps you watching and it keeps the lights on or whatever, they're obviously doing something right. And if you don't like that, then don't fucking watch it. Like, I don't know what else to say. I mean, unless you're like, and good for you. If you hate it and you're making money off of hating it, good for you. You know what? That's awesome, because you're making money off it. Good for you. But I'm not in that crowd. And I know you're not in that crowd either. And like, I like to have that drama a little bit here as YouTube is what it is, but not the expense of cutting it off for somebody else to enjoy. And I don't know, but
and I think we're on the edge of wrapping it up, but yeah, on the tail end to tie on to your internet drama. What our grab bag this week, which we published before this, we did dip our toes into internet drama, so to speak. So and maybe you didn't watch it, and it's premiering right now as we record, but yeah. Actually, it's probably wrapping up, but yeah, we dipped our toes into internet drama. It was a fun one. I think I really enjoyed taping it. I know Mike did too. And so maybe since it wasn't quite what we normally do, you were kind of hesitant to watch. But if you're watching this, I'd say give it a try. We had a little fun with it. Even if you're not familiar with the characters that we talk about, we go deep enough for you to understand what's going on with them. So you'll have fun. So give it a try. If it's not your bag, that's cool. But yeah, definitely give it a try and see what you think.
Absolutely, yeah. And if Def Noodles ever saw any of our stuff and wanted to pick a fight, that's fine by me. But Boy, if you want to pick a fight, that's fine. That's totally fine, because you're just going to elevate us, and that's totally fine by me.
yeah. Although I think Def Noodles probably has his hands full right now with everybody reporting on him, but I think
all the lies he has to remember too. He's got to remember every other lie. He just doesn't even bother to do that. So it is what it is.
yeah. He has in the past picked on lower smaller channels. So we may hear from him. We may not, but yeah, we're ready for him if he comes our way.
Yeah, and I'll give you a California howdy if you try, bud. Good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
And we'll make it very public. We'll make it very public and very bloody as it goes. But we're not into that. We're not into that thing. We're just here, two nerds. And the more people that join the Nerdom and have an opinion one way or another, this is all lighthearted stuff. It is what it is. But I continue to enjoy our grab bag, and as it evolves, we're getting even better at it. Matter of fact, we're probably rolling up on I think it's November. I think November or October is our first 1 year of this whole thing. And keep your eyes peeled, because we have some special ideas and plans that we have in the works that Thomas and I would love to share as our show evolves. And as we kind of grow, we welcome you aboard. You're not going to be disappointed if you start in with Rings of Power or House of D, at very wide spectrum. I will say there that I think that Amazon they're learning, just like a technology company is wont to do. And I think that there was some flubbing there with the Wheel of Time series. Maybe they'll take lessons learned and they'll make kind of other properties that they have under their belt better. It certainly couldn't get any worse. As it were. Of course, we didn't really cover that too much, but it was kind of panned by folks. But the things about even the failures in entertainment companies learn from. I think that's the one thing that people don't give credit to big corp. They do learn from them. They do try to shift over time, and they try to do that as best they can. At the end of the day, it's not in their best interest to pick a fight with the fans, but for some reason they do. I just wish Amazon would just kind of roll off the throttle and just knock it off and just like let folks be. And I think that they don't need to fight or argue. The artwork does itself its own service. It stands on its own. And if it can't stand on its own, well, we'll find that out over the long term. So
right.
I don't think
I
any
think
of these things.
I think we can award the Scorn of Gorn in one aspect, in that House of the Dragons did a very classic way of introducing the show. They had some trailers, but it was very low key. They didn't
pick a fight.
They didn't beat anyone over the head. They didn't pick any internet fights. They were pretty much radio silent except for their trailers that they put out, and there wasn't a whole lot of fanfare over the trailers. But they put out the show and let the fans come to it.
Exactly.
I don't know the numbers, but I know that the first episode was successful. But as the fans watched it and encouraged other fans to watch it, the audience grew with each episode. And that's the power of that show. Whereas Rings of Power, they were they're very tone deaf and flubbed the introduction to the show. They made the fans angry. They didn't do anything to rectify that. They even intensified the anger. So it's pissed off the fans to the point where I don't know how many of the fans actually watched the show. And the ones that did, a lot of them hate watched it, looking for errors and looking for things to be mad about. And they found it, whatever they found, they latched onto anything that they could on it. So Amazon very much mishandled the introduction to the show.
Absolutely. You're right.
In
you, sir, are absolutely 100% fucking correct, and thank you for bringing that up. That is the Scorn of Gorn. You're right. If anything can be criticized, and I think we're kind of getting to the tail.
Go ahead and bring up the Scorn of Gorn for Rings of Power.
I will absolutely back you up. 100% back you up on that. The PR game that they play with Power of the Rings, they fucked up, and they fucked up bad. Again, you literally had the Tolkien nerds like going out, if you want to use the analogy of coming out in front of the castle proper that is Amazon Prime, and looking for a fight, and you gave them a fight. What are you doing? Whereas House of the Dragon, they didn't care. They don't need to, because they know that this quality speaks for itself. And I've never ever seen in this is going to go down in history as like one of the more 0 out of 0 that Amazon gets out of handling the PR for the show, and talking about everything but the show, but the actual show, and like letting it speak for itself. They screw that up royally. And that there's a price to be paid for that somewhere down the line. I'm not quite sure, but why would you ever engage them? Why? Like, why? There can't be a battle if you don't show up. Like, they're going to say they're going to say what they're going to say anyway. Like, I really don't understand the thought process. I don't see the payoff there, but whatever. Scorn and Gorn, Amazon Prime, stick your nose, keep your nose out of it. Like, let the fandom do whatever they're going to do, and just like let the thing speak for itself, because what you made is wonderful. And you're just going to sully you're just going to put a bad taste in. And the other thing is, like, there's a lot more mom and pops that will stay away from something if it's controversial, period. And they'll just cut it off. They don't have time. Just like I don't. Like, I say this repeatedly. I only have so much time to watch something or whatever. If I even perceive an odious odor around it, outside of me doing this podcast specifically to watch things, I'm probably just going to like walk away from it. And I might come back a year or two later, maybe. But I don't want to. Nobody wants to be in the pit with these people. So.
Yeah. So
they have a lot to learn on the PR side from the House of D folks, and how they handle that. They're just like, okay, fine, whatever. Yeah, I don't. You're right. The only controversy that I ever recall from Game of Thrones was there's such a like in the time that the old show ended, and now there was all kinds of rumors, and we didn't even cover them because they were so all over the fact they made a pilot. It didn't see the light of day a few times or whatever. So it never
Yeah.
became a thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
even,
that first pilot was is now lost media along with the
right,
Batgirl movie. but
right.
yeah, from what I heard, the pilot was so vast. It was, they said it was good, but it was so vastly different from Game of Thrones.
It was too much.
Yeah, probably didn't warrant the name of Game of Thrones, and they wanted to get something, I guess, closer in
Yeah,
line with
they
what Game of Thrones is.
they they can't. I believe the original pilot was for like 10,000 years, way back when it was the first man, and it was the ice giants and things like. I think that
Yeah.
they needed to have a bridge in order for us to get there. Well, I think we'll get there eventually, but you need to have a bridge that reminds folks of Game of Thrones and why we're talking. Does it make sense to go back 10,000 years to like this whole land that like nobody knows anything of, even for the hardcore Game of Thrones fans and our Martin fans? You're just not. It's so they did what they did and how they did it and where we're at now is perfect. It makes sense, and I'm glad. They had every right to kill that pilot for now, and maybe revisit that later on when we build a bridge to the deeper lore
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
Game of Thrones. It's very new. That's
Yeah.
another thing too, is people, even though it's been on for a decade now, or the phenomenon has been around for a long time. We're getting to that point, but we're not quite ready, and they're very smart to do that. And House of the Dragon is perfectly tailored for the next chapter of this Westeros saga that George has given us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fine line between telling, yeah, if you go too far one way, you detach from the property altogether,
Right.
and telling, and you lose your fans, whereas this House of Dragons has enough member berries to kind of latch you in, the music, and then all the houses like Targaryen.
Oh,
Oh, it's like
that
I
reminds
remember that. Oh yeah, the
that
Lannisters. I remember those guys.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say this kind of Easter egg too for House of Dragon as a final thing before we step off here is in the show intro and the theme, what you're actually seeing is the House Targaryen. You're starting up here, and then as the blood flows and it hits this symbol and that, and then it kind of flows down. You're seeing a house in decline. That's essentially what you're seeing. You're seeing it go downhill, whereas it's not on the ascendant; it's on the descendant, and that's kind of like a little kind of Easter egg that I didn't know about. Like I didn't know what I was watching until like somebody told me, but I'm not going to claim credit for that at all. But
Right.
it all goes into the maximum enjoyment of the show. And hey, if you have any kind of YouTube channels or podcasts that go in depth that are like on the nerd side of the house, let us know. I would love to hear about more. Like I just shouted out one that's Nerd of the Rings. I think is great. Great take on it. Alt Shift X is one that I've talked about frequently here for Game of Thrones, House of the Dragons. Anything that you have there, what's your favorite? Let us know. Bonus points if it's under that 500K subs to like where it's kind of newer. Even if it has millions, I want to hear about it. But in any case, I don't know that there's much more to say other than like we definitely enjoyed this take on it. And we hope you would join us time and again for our takes. I don't. Do you have anything else to add, Thomas, as we roll up here to the end?
No, just watch both, and if you're so inclined, and yeah, and give us your opinion on it. We're
Yeah.
always interested. Yeah, just give us your hot take on Hot D or Rings of P, and just get involved with our channel any way you want to, and yeah, give us your opinion on the shows.
Absolutely, you can't go wrong either one. No matter what you pick. Probably the weakest thing out of all this that we've talked about this week is Samaritan, but that's in its own. It's a whole different thing. But of all things being equal, you can't go wrong. If you're a fantasy nerd, you're going to be very well served, whichever side of the coin you pick, for sure. And with that being said, I've been Mike.
Yep. Beware of dragons. I'm Thomas.
See you later.
See
Bye.
ya.